Hello and welcome to the Thanatos TV studio. An old saying goes, sleep is the little brother of death. And fittingly, traditionally, there is an idea that the soul relaxes and moves away from the body during sleep, while in the process of death it completely detaches from the body. Accordingly, while we dream, we would all travel through the spheres or levels beyond. And from dream research we know that every person dreams every night, even if they no longer remember it after waking up. Dreams are at the center of our conversation today. Our hostess in the Thanatos TV studio is Jennifer Neo. For her, dream experiences have become very important, as an opportunity to learn more about the secrets of life beyond space and time. This has become important to her ever since she had foreseen the death of her mother in the context of a far-reaching spiritual experience, similar to a near-death experience. Jennifer Neo's interviewee is Annika Scheller. She was inspired by a profound personal experience, the death of her 3-year-old daughter, to keep having out-of-body experiences. Conscious dreaming has become very important to her. Both of them have been keeping a personal dream diary for years and, interestingly, independently of each other, have come to very similar conclusions. Look forward to an exciting journey of insight into a world in which we all immerse ourselves night after night, even if we may not remember much of it during waking hours.
Guten Tag, Frau Annika Scheller.
Hello, Miss Annika Scheller. You tragically lost your daughter and then found a rather beautiful and unconventional way to still keep in contact with her. Could you tell us briefly what led to this? Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. And to come to your question, my daughter died, I'd say, just under 3 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, under very inexplicable circumstances. She unexpectedly and suddenly died, and no one could explain it. It was a very traumatic event, a blow of fate, which I don't think anyone would want to experience. No parent would want to lose their child, and yet it happened. And yet an incredible number of parents lose their children, even though they don't want to. At the time, I took a very unconventional path, which many people might have ridiculed. At the time, I was very interested in the subject of after-death contacts, spirituality, and life after death. And I started researching because I thought, I just want to know what comes next. If something comes next, and if so, what will it look like? And is it easy to come into contact with it? Stemming from the need, if there is another world in which my daughter is right now, then I would like to be able to discover it. Yes, and the problem was, well, basically, I read a lot and dealt a lot with these topics. And of course, there are many people who say, yes, there is a life after death, and it's wonderful. You don't have to worry. You'll see each other again one day. But the point is that to hope or to believe simply wasn't enough, because again and again, these doubts arose that it may not be so. And then I started to say, no, I want to have my own experiences. I want to have my own experiences and really know and experience myself whether this is actually true. And then you started your research in this direction. Exactly. And as far as I know, you also tried this by means of dreams. Can you remember when you made contact with your daughter for the first time? Yes, I can still remember it well. Basically, it happened relatively shortly after her death, and it even happened to my mother first. I always say, or I've had the experience, that the deceased very often look for a simple way to get in touch. At that time, I was still very much in deep grief. I was in a state of shock, and I was not yet accessible to her messages. I would say I was shielded. And then my mother had a dream of her, relatively shortly after her death, in which she said goodbye. I'm fine where I am. It's beautiful. And so she was able to convey this message to the rest of the family. And as a result, I also had some dream encounters with my daughter, where she always said goodbye and said, hey, I'm fine, I'm here. Please don't be sad. And I think it's an incredibly great tool, these dreams, to gain this access to this other world, because a lot happens. It's just interesting. How do you then distinguish whether it's just a dream or a real encounter in this dream? Otherwise, you could say, well, I dreamed of the person. But in most cases, I experienced that people who have lost someone close to them, for example, and then actually dream of this person, they perceive it as something very, very beautiful, and as something deep and real. And in that case, they don't even question that it could have just been a dream. I think it just feels very different. How do you feel about it? Yes, I also feel that it's really a completely different type of experience. It has a completely different quality. You remember these experiences incredibly well, these encounters, and it feels so real that you don't even question it. It has a completely different quality. And often, part of it is also a message to the person who's been left behind, something really important. Something like, I'm fine, don't worry, don't grieve for me. And that's a characteristic to me, because these real encounters are completely different from these normal, let's say, dream encounters, where the subconscious might also play a role and bring certain fears and worries to light, or where you process things that might still be unresolved. I can only say that my experience has also confirmed this, because a relative of mine lost her son in a car accident, and she was very, very sad, and I didn't really know her son, because he was a distant relative. I only saw him maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. And then I actually dreamed of him after his death. And he had a message for me to relate to his mother, and she was actually able to take something away from this message. That was very interesting for me, because I did what he said. He said he would like to get in touch with her himself, but because of her grief, this wasn't possible. And I should relay something for his mother. And I did. And for her, it was very clear that this was a real encounter, and not just a dream, because I passed on information that only the 2 of them knew of and had meaning for. Yes, but I also feel that this is incredibly helpful and gives a lot of comfort and hope, and can influence and change the affected person and their grief. But I also want to say that each of us dreams several times at night anyway, and these dream encounters definitely happen to everyone, even to those who are deep in grief. But the difference is, we can often just not remember it, because we are not used to remembering these experiences. I think that is also an important point, because if you want to support people to learn this yourself, there are certain prerequisites that have to be met, because memory of a dream is, I think, one of the most important elements. Because without memory of a dream, you would not even notice such encounters. Yes, and I also find it very interesting to observe children in this regard. Children are absolutely genuine, unbiased, and remember dreams incredibly well, and these experiences with other worlds and beings. And what happens? They come to their parents in the morning, run up and say, "What did I experience tonight?" And they are very excited to tell what happened. And then often the parents say, "Oh, that was just a nice dream, and you have a really great imagination." And little by little, we lose the ability to keep this access, and simply forget what we experience at night. And it's an incredible amount of things that happen. That's right, yes. Now it's important. How can people start to remember their dreams better? How do you start to be able to continue this journey? Well, first of all, really making the conscious decision that I want to remember starting today. And I think this really goes hand in hand with our own subconscious, because there are many techniques and strategies that you can use to increase your memory of dreams. And it really goes hand in hand with your own subconscious, because you always want to signal, from now on, please don't forget what I'm experiencing tonight. And the most important tool is really the dream diary. I've experienced that too. I can confirm that. So, without actually writing them down, without the daily habit of writing down my dreams, I wouldn't have gotten this far. And in the beginning, it was a rocky road. It's almost as if you want to learn a new language. You really have to start from scratch, like you're learning a new language or a new sport. In the beginning, it was just dream fragments that sometimes didn't make any sense at all. And with time and practice, I got better. And also the messages became much clearer. And the frequency of significant dreams increased a lot over time, of course. Yes, and it's also very exciting because on the one hand, you have to increase your memory to be able to remember what you're experiencing at night. And on the other hand, you have to interpret these things, and that's a completely different topic because it's often very symbolic. Nevertheless, there's an incredible potential to decipher these dreams. For example, you can go to bed with a question in the evening and receive the answer to it in your dreams at night. I've done that several times. It really took a few nights, but I did receive answers, and they were mostly correct, especially when it was about something like surgery, where I didn't know if it was benign or malignant. And in my dream, I was told beforehand that everything was fine, that there was no danger. That was confirmed later. And of course, it's also tiring and requires a lot of effort and commitment. But in the end, it's the potential. It's a huge gift to remember what you're experiencing at night, because you simply forget an incredible number of hours that you spend on other levels, if you will. On other levels, yes. And then you're conscious only during the day, and at night you just leave everything behind and don't engage with it. And that's just a shame. It's a shame, right? Because so much is possible. Starting with dreams of the future, getting in touch with the deceased, getting help in difficult situations. I've also experienced that there are dream helpers, people you meet in your dreams again and again, who are responsible for various questions. And what I've found very interesting about this phenomenon is that you, me, and many other people are taught in our dreams. You're put together in groups in your dreams, and they recur again and again. It's like a dream series where you're taught to fly, for example. I dreamed it and then heard from you that you were taught in your dreams as well. Can you tell us about that? Yes, but I wouldn't say it was just a dream. I always compare it like this. There are so many realities and dimensions, and I always compare it with an instrument. It always depends on the vibration. A guitar has different strings, and they all vibrate in a different pitch. Depending on which string you play, it sounds higher or lower. But still, they're all part of the same guitar. And depending on how high we vibrate, how high our frequency is, we reach other levels. There's the dream level, which is incredibly diverse. Then there is the lucid dream level, where we can shape things, where we in our subconscious can be incredibly active and change things. And then there's the otherworldly level, where you can meet the deceased. And. There are probably many more levels that we can't understand yet, and we don't have a name for them. We use the word dream for, from my point of view, completely different things, because in lucid dreaming, I've noticed that there are actually different levels. I also want non-lucid dreams, which are the dreams we normally have. Lucid dreaming means being aware that you are dreaming. You know that you're in another reality in a dream, but you're fully aware and can do things. You can do whatever you want and also change things, as you've already said. The normal dream is the non-lucid dream, where I'm in a dream event without being aware that I'm dreaming. During the dream, it seems to be reality. Even in the first level of the dream, I received important information, especially through symbolic language. And in the second level, these lucid dreams, it was also possible to train. I think that's also utilized by athletes, that they improve and internalize movements through the lucid dream, for example. Yes. And I also think that these situations you mentioned, these training scenarios or trials that we can go through at night or train or whatever, that it's not always happening on the dream level. But I have to say that out-of-body experiences and lucid dreams take place in a very deep state of consciousness, and that's very similar to dreaming. And to take memories into the waking state of consciousness, that has to be practiced and trained well. And often, it happens that people experience all these states at night, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams, and so on. Most of the time, they're just not trained to remember that, and then slide back into a non-lucid dream. And this event that they experience in a completely awake state of consciousness and in a completely different quality remains only as a particularly vivid dream in memory, even though it wasn't really a dream. Not a non-lucid dream in the conventional sense. You mean on a different level, that different dimensions, so to speak, have actually been entered into. I can only confirm that. I always find it interesting in this context, with these phenomena, that people experience it similarly. For example, the state of vibration. That's a difference. Within a non-lucid dream, a state of vibration can occur that leads to a lucid dream or an astral journey. Or already when you fall asleep, this state of vibration in the body, which is very uncomfortable for me personally, I have to say. If I didn't really let myself fall, I would wake up immediately. But through this state of vibration, on the inside, you usually reach another level of dream. I see in this the confirmation that this has to do with vibration. I find it interesting that all people who practice this experience something similar with sounds or states of vibration. How did you experience this? Especially children. There are so many people who experience this automatically, but who can't name it and don't know what it means. They say, I constantly experience these states of vibration, and that scares me a lot. And I can understand that because often it's a state of vibration accompanied by very unpleasant sounds. They can also be frightening and disconcerting because you know that this is something that happens inside of you and doesn't come from the outside. And that can be scary, especially for children. And these vibrations that can be very strong, can change over time. It doesn't always have to be the same. I also experience them as unpleasant. The first times were worse or more unpleasant, and now it's not like that anymore. And just knowing what is happening, that it is just a phase shift, and that you're ready to enter another level of consciousness is very helpful to stay calm. It's important to stay calm and to keep your emotions as subdued as possible. And at some point, you reach a state where you're just happy and think, wow, here we go. Where do I want to go now? It's a process, a development, and you have to get rid of your fears. I think that's a central topic. Because even in my dreams, I was told to let myself fall. I was also tested. I think you also experienced some test situations where you were given tasks and had to cope with them as if you were being tested to see if you're ready to enter the next level. That's at least what it seemed like to me. Yes, that's very interesting, because I already read about this in the book by Robert Monroe, who has been dealing with the phenomenon of out-of-body experiences for a long time. He reported that he was often tested for years at night and had to go through a lot of trials before he was allowed to move on. I was also allowed to cope with a lot of test situations where I was simply observed to see how far I was already in my development and if I was ready to let go. I've also experienced that. That was a central topic for me, the letting go. But I find it interesting. Where does it come from? Why do people experience these parallels in their dreams? Who is testing them? I think if you really decide to take a certain path, like we did, and you want to gain more knowledge and gain your own experience, there is always a willingness to help and support you in this. I'm not saying that this path has to be for everyone, not at all, but the benefit is very, very big to be able to learn so much. And we get a lot of support to do this. Of course you're accompanied and also asked if you can let go of your earthly fears and if you're already one step further. Can you deal with seeing dead children without wanting to say goodbye to them in this world? I also notice that there are filters that say, yes, I'm giving you this information, but you can't take it with you. There are also parallels to near-death experiences where this can happen as well. I experience in my dreams that there is a filter where certain information can't be taken with you, or certain experiences can't be made. There are black voids that you can't remember, or just short outbursts out of the body and then you're right back in. I think it's important to know that nothing happens without a reason, and that we are accompanied, and it's taken into account what we can handle. I have accompanied a good friend for years who lost his son and practices night after night, very consistently, and does everything to see his son again. He has met him very often, just like other people see and meet their deceased loved ones. His problem was that he couldn't remember anything, not a single encounter. The question was, why is this experience not being granted to him? He was very angry and disappointed. He was so diligent in practicing and always kept trying. And the answer was as follows, and I think it's absolutely plausible, that he is still too deep in mourning, and it's important to find a balance, not only to want to leave, but to anchor oneself in the here and now, in this world. The answer was, he wouldn't want to leave, he would want to stay with his son, and wouldn't want to come back. That's why he had a barrier, so that he couldn't remember, and I think that's good. Because it's important to enjoy life and not to lose focus. Yes, of course. Ms. Scheller, you wrote your 6th book, and I think in it you refer to the conditions that could support leaving the body for a real out-of-body experience, which is the highest level of the dream. What are your tips? What did you discover? Basically, I have to say there are 3 groups of people when it comes to out-of-body experiences. The first group practices and wants to experience it because they want to know how it feels, but at some point they realize that they have to do a lot for it, and it doesn't happen that fast, and they decide that it's not for them, or maybe it doesn't exist at all. The second group practices and experiences an out-of-body experience, and is convinced that it exists, and a life after death is real, and is satisfied to experience it every now and then, or stops entirely. And the third group, to which I belong, isn't satisfied by that, and wants to experience it every night. I really practiced day and night, and wanted to see more and more and know more, because there are so many questions that come up, and I was often very frustrated, because for weeks nothing happened, and I didn't want to rely on chance. I wanted to find out which factors lead to my success, and which factors make it harder. And that's how a whole series of factors became clear to me that can be supportive if you want to experience out-of-body experiences. During the last 6 months, which was a very intensive phase, I accompanied 7 great people who wanted to see their deceased loved ones again through out-of-body experiences. You have to pay attention to your own vibration. And I would like to mention that many people who want to experience something at night, visit the deceased, experience their own immortality. I would say the key point is that you have to do something. You have to increase your memory, you have to pay attention to your own vibration, you have to stick to it. Nothing is given to us. I would say. And you have to show motivation, commitment, patience, a lot of patience, because I had the experience, and I think it's not only me, you've had the same experience, that there are moments of silence when nothing happens. And you have to say, just because I can't see progress, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening, and there are no small steps of progress that are being made. I'm not the most talented in this regard. There are surely far more talented people. It's really not that easy. For example, I practiced for 3 years because I wanted to know if there really is this famous OBE, the complete out-of-body experience, and if it is different compared to a lucid dream. And within these 3 years, I've had 3 experiences, so I'm not really a professional, so to speak. But they were very impressive, especially the last one, during which I had support. You can call on a dream helper. I did that through deep meditation. I prepared myself throughout the day to really give it a try, and I succeeded. I fell asleep in a state of strong vibration. You really feel like your whole body is vibrating. That's how I perceive it anyway. I was shaking, but I was completely calm, lying in bed on the edge of the hypnagogic state where you fall asleep. You also hear noises. It gets pretty loud, and the next moment I found myself in a lucid dream. A very, very stable lucid dream. I knew I was at the Bosporus. In front of me, a monk was walking, dressed in white. Other monks were meditating, and I was told, yes, you will be led to a dream helper whom you've called on. You will increase your vibration, and you will experience an OBE. I thanked him, and we went up a mountain, and I could really see every single stone on the ground, and the weather. It was all very precise, like reality. And the dream helper was my totem animal. It's a spider, and I was actually afraid because of how big it was. And then it came to me and touched me, and caused another state of vibration in me. And from this state of vibration, I found myself in a stairway, and the clarity of things was even greater. It was very stable to me. I experienced it like reality. I went down the stairway, and I found myself in Vienna. My car was there. I took my keys. I got in. I could hear the sounds from the construction site. My leather steering wheel even had the same characteristics as it does in reality. So I was oriented, and everything was totally clear, like it was in our consciousness during the day. Complete waking consciousness. And I knew, okay, this is nice, because now I can, in this dream, in this OBE, experience realities without being in the waking world, but feel the same and experience everything. And then different dimensional gates opened up. There were 3, all quite small tunnels. Funnily enough, they were tunnels. And I had the possibility to listen in. That's how it was for me, to hear what was going on at the end of each tunnel. And I could choose what I was interested in and let myself be sucked in. I went through one of the tunnels and found myself in a new reality. And as a spectator, I could see exactly what was going on. That was quite exciting, because I found myself in a prison. I saw a prison scene with several prisoners, obviously after yard time, dressed in orange. They were speaking English. I heard their voices, saw the hall, and I could observe how the prisoners were being brought into the cells. And I noticed that a guard was very scared. He was new. He was overwhelmed by the situation, and his job would have been to watch the group and make sure that no one stayed behind. He was overwhelmed, and a few prisoners sneaked past him. And unfortunately, I saw how it turned out. He was really scared. He said he didn't want to stay there, and he had to go to the toilet or he couldn't stay there anymore. And he went back, and the prisoners sadly beat him up. I could see it from above. and I thought, I don't like this scene anymore, I want to leave. And in that moment, I was back in the car, and I was able to choose a nicer world again by listening in and being sucked in by the tunnel. And that happened 3 or 4 times, until I thought, I want to end this OBE. I want to go back. Because there were different worlds that showed up. I could watch things, I could choose the worlds freely. And at some point, I thought to myself, this is crazy. It's amazing that this experience has already lasted this long, but I want to go back. And I thought about my body, just thought about my body. And then I came back to my body from this situation with my consciousness and woke up. And for me, that was the biggest difference. After waking up, it didn't feel like it was a dream at all. It felt as if I hadn't slept, as if I had been fully conscious, and had looked at different levels while being fully conscious. And in between, I was able to think, to reflect. I knew the whole time that I had been transported there through the lucid dream. I knew that my body was lying down during this experience. And this overall clarity, I would say, is even higher than in a lucid dream. Yes, that's absolutely fascinating. And I can confirm that because many people always ask me, Annika, how do you know that the experiences you experienced there are not just dreams? And I always say, you have to prove that to yourself, because you can only really understand it if you've experienced it yourself. I always describe it like this. It's exactly like waking consciousness. You have complete agency. It's just like right now, the way we are both sitting here. That's exactly how it feels at that moment. I'm often on the move at night, and I get up and have already left my body, and I just don't know it yet. Because it feels so real, and you really have to take a closer look then. And especially lucid dreams, I would say, are a gateway, as you've described it. Lucid dreams can be converted incredibly well into out-of-body experiences. I have experienced lucid dreams as a first stage, and from there, again with an increase in vibration, I went into this OBE. And for me, the OBE was a selection of dimensions that I was allowed to visit. And that usually doesn't happen in lucid dreams. I haven't experienced that in a lucid dream yet. And as I said, the biggest difference after a lucid dream is that when I wake up, it feels like I've been sleeping. And that feeling wasn't there at all. It's hard to describe for people who haven't experienced it yet. It didn't really feel like relaxation either. Do you have the feeling after an OBE that you're relaxed, like from a good night's sleep? Because I didn't have that. For me, it's basically like this. When I have an OBE and return, and then I'm back in my bedroom, I'm full of energy all day. For me, it's like this. It was explained to me that DMT is released in the body during an OBE. That's a substance that supplies you with energy. And I work with sleep interruptions during the night and really target OBEs night after night. And I'm awake for an hour every night. But I don't miss that at all because my body also sleeps afterwards. And my mind and my consciousness is on the move. And I'm basically refueling myself with a lot of energy. I remember I also felt like I was recharged. I was also totally excited and had to tell someone what had happened to me right away, because the difference was enormous, and how that presented itself, that was really great. But as I said, maybe my body was relaxed, but my mind felt like I was just more alert, probably because I had complete waking consciousness. Yes, exactly. And because you mentioned lucid dreams earlier, as far as the difference between lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences is concerned, there is a point that is very important to me. In a lucid dream, subconsciousness plays an incredible role. If, for example, you want to visit a deceased person, you can of course do that in a lucid dream state or during an out-of-body experience. I've had the experience, and it has been reported to me many times, that when you meet a deceased person in a lucid dream state, this encounter simply feels completely different. Often the deceased person doesn't seem so happy. He may also say things that make you sad. Something is wrong. You also have a feeling of worry. And that is always a sign for me. It's just the subconscious, the worry. That comes to light and reflects to you that you still have a lot of worries. It's part of you. You need to work on it and take a look at it. And in a lucid dream state, you can also manipulate a lot of things and create things yourself. And that is often the goal for people who want to induce these lucid dreams, with the goal of creating something themselves, or just to have certain experiences, to be able to fly and all these things, which can also be very attractive, because you can really create anything. Or just like sports, you can train at night, or you can also learn a foreign language, prepare for an exam at night, do all these things, which can be very attractive, but also really take it a step further and say, I won't stay lucid, I'll just change the level again by increasing my vibration and go into another dimension. I tried that by meditating in my lucid dream to get to another level from there. That also worked, which was very interesting. That's exciting, I have to try that too. If you are in a lucid state, you can meditate. I thought, why not meditate in the state? I was also helped a lot by my spiritual helper, because I really tried very often to transform this lucid dream state, because I knew that it works. I also knew that it works by simulating a feeling of falling. Many lucid dreamers simply transform the dream to become astral by letting themselves fall. Or by rolling out and letting themselves fall. They close their eyes and let themselves fall. Something about it induces this state of vibration and speaks to this energetic body, but it almost never worked for me. Then I had an experience during the night. I was in a kind of gymnasium. I was lucid. There were two beings who showed themselves to me as women. They said, today we will help you optimize your ability to switch from a lucid dream body to an astral body. They gave me support and tips to just let myself fall, and then to get into the state of vibration. And then when I arrive at the bottom, so to speak, I should visualize a huge trampoline, from which I then jump away and switch directly into my energetic body. And that worked really well, and I still do that today. I actually induce 90% of my out-of-body experiences through lucid dreaming by transforming them. That is a special talent, because many people have to practice for a very long time to get a lucid dream at all. Yes, but I would say, in most cases, it is often due to an inability to remember their dreams. Many who practice are of the opinion that they experience nothing, but they experience something, they just can't remember it. That is often the biggest hurdle of all. Firstly, the ability to remember dreams, and secondly, to stay motivated. And of course, the right know-how. When do I practice? What should I be mindful of? What do I need to do to keep my vibration high? There are many tips. For example, with lucid dreams, it helped me a lot to pay close attention to my environment and to then look for mistakes, because often something is different. For instance, a clock suddenly has 4 hands, and you think, no, that can't be, I'm dreaming right now. So you train your critical consciousness accordingly to simply detect, when am I actually in a dream and when am I not? Yes, it is also the case that in a dream, our reasoning center, the prefrontal cortex, is switched off. It does not work. That means the most illogical things can happen in a dream, in the so-called dream logic. We do not question it. There are time jumps, we suddenly move from one place to another, and we do not question it. That was the way for me. That led me to always ask these critical questions. Where am I right now? I do that here in reality too. I check everything, so that you get used to it, so that you can do it in a dream. And then you realize, no, that cannot be. The person is currently paying at the checkout with guinea pigs, and it's not bothering anyone. That can't be. That's a dream. And the moment you realize that, there comes this moment when you become lucid. And often, I notice that when you've discovered and resolved it, no, that's not true, I'm in a dream, reality changes again. It becomes clearer, it becomes more stable. Interestingly, absurd things often disappear, as if they were just hints that we are dreaming. Yes, at the beginning when I practiced lucid dreaming, I did a lot of reality checks. I questioned my reality during the day again and again, and checked, am I dreaming or am I awake? Because we know that things that we experience during the day inevitably come up in our dreams at night. And the more often I check my reality during the day, the more I question it, the more likely it is that I will do it at night in my dreams and then become lucid. And I've had the experience that often at the beginning, when I became lucid, dream figures wanted to prevent me from becoming lucid. I always do it like this. I check during the day, I count the fingers of my hand, and look, does my hand have 5 fingers? Because in a dream, your hand never has 5 fingers. No, neither does mine. That was also the case with Carlos Castaneda. He describes it exactly like this, that you should look at your hand, because in a dream, it is either too thin or too little, or there are too many fingers. And that's a great start to become lucid. And at the beginning, I had the experience that suddenly dream figures turned off the light, or took my hand and wanted to prevent me from looking at my hand. But not anymore. Interestingly, I can't explain why. Maybe subconsciously. But that has stopped over time. Yes, I had that too. That other dream people who you find in a dream, as soon as you become lucid, do something or distract you, so that you slip into a non-lucid dream again. That's really interesting, these filter mechanisms. I find dream people interesting anyway, because I've already asked them a lot of things in a lucid state. I wanted to know, do they have a story, or what do they say about things? There was a conversation between me and a dream person, where I tried to explain, look, I'm dreaming you right now, because I'm actually sleeping. And this dream person answered me, no, that's not true at all, because I'm dreaming you, because I went to sleep, because my name is so-and-so, and I went to bed then and then. So there was a discussion in a lucid state about who is dreaming whom now. That was funny. Those are things you can try out. Yes, and also speak with your subconscious, especially dream figures. Just go and ask, what do you want to tell me? What do you stand for? Or in a nightmare. My son, for instance, is a great lucid dreamer, and he always diffuses his nightmares by becoming lucid. And that's a great method for adults too, to become aware of their own fears and to diffuse them. And just go and ask, what do you want to tell me? Yes, exactly. That's what I experienced when I still had nightmares too. That was a very, very long time ago. I always tried to run away as a child. I think a lot of people know this type of dream when you're on the run. And then I got a tip from a friend, concentrate on it and stop for a moment and ask these people, what do they stand for? And then I got an answer, we stand for your fears, this and this and this. And then it never happened again. Since then, I haven't been running away in my dreams at all. I hardly ever have nightmares. Interestingly, I also don't have them anymore. At the beginning, when I tried to increase my dream memory, I had very intense nightmares, but not anymore, only very, very rarely. And that's why I think it's such an enrichment to work on yourself, to pay attention to your dreams, to see what do they want to say, what benefits can I draw from it, what messages and so on. Because obviously there's something going on in you. There's something going on in you because you have to reflect on it. I have a friend who tried it and suddenly had terrible nightmares. Then she said, no, I'd rather stop it now. That was the reason why I shouldn't have dreams, because I only have nightmares now. And it's hard to help a person through this phase, to face it because it's only temporary, but it can be very frightening because we're really exposed in a dream. Everyone who's had a nightmare knows how terrible it can feel, even though it's not reality, but it's really very, very uncomfortable. And many, many things we don't want to remember. We just want to set them aside. Nightmares or bad dreams. But these can also have an incredible potential. For example, I always have the same dream when I'm currently straying from the right path, when I'm supposed to choose a different path. I always dream that I'm driving a car and my car veers off the road. And that's always a sign for me that something is going wrong in my life, that I need to correct something. And I think that's a great support, because I always know, okay, something has to change. There's something I have to take a closer look at. And you always experience this dream symbol and know, well, now I have to monitor myself. That's something very, very beautiful that I myself have experienced again and again, that in my dreams, concrete help for my life is offered, how to assess a situation, or also in form of a discussion. I've seen it before. No, everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. Look where their strengths lie. You could have reacted this way and that way. So really concrete examples are given how to find a better way or how to assess things differently in day-to-day life. Yes, and then it's really about putting value on the dream interpretation. And that's something very personal I've noticed. There are so many guidebooks that deal with this and provide a list of dream symbols. But it's so personal, because what a monkey is for me is something completely different for you. And then it's really about becoming a researcher yourself. I think it's only possible that way because I've experienced the same thing. The meanings are so general, but it's always important to look at the whole dream event. As I said, even just an apple. Did I always enjoy eating this apple as a child because it was given to me by a loved one? It can really symbolize so many things that it's hard to generalize. Yes, and also the emotion I have in the dream is so essential for the dream interpretation. How do I feel about it? Do I feel good? Am I full of worry? And then to link it up and to put it together piece by piece until it turns into a whole picture. And over time, it gets easier. You learn, this symbol means this or that and stands for that. And you get something out of it. You are no longer active only during the day, but also become aware at night. Gain knowledge and receive help. Yes, that's really quite amazing, actually. That we use this kind of reality far too little, or that we normally don't even pay attention to it at all. It's that way for most people, and I also only started practicing this when I was an adult. Yes, there are really a lot of little tips that you can use during the day or in the evening or so to remember something very quickly. Tips that are incredibly easy to integrate into everyday life, which don't take up much time. To speak the sentence, I would like to remember a dream in the evening, and then in the morning try to remember, where was I? What did I dream? You have to do that before you do anything else. You shouldn't let a lot of time pass. You shouldn't brush your teeth beforehand or something like that. It's important to directly afterwards, after waking up, ask yourself, where was I? I think that's the point where the most memories are lost. To wake up properly, because the alarm clock rings, you're already thinking about work and so on, and everything flies away. You might also have a short memory of a dream, but it disappears very quickly. And within 10 minutes, I think 50% of your dream memory has disappeared. That's a relatively short window of time, and it's really worth it to just lie down and keep your eyes closed, not to move, to shield off all stimuli and just try to go through topics, maybe topics that you often dream about, and then to see, okay, is something coming up? What feeling did I have when I woke up? Maybe to change the sleeping position. Because sometimes memories suddenly pop up when you get into the position in which you had the dream. For example, in the evening before I go to sleep, I like to take a moment for myself and go through my whole day from the beginning to the end. That doesn't take long, and then I really recall all the situations in my memory with all the emotions, because everything is associated with emotions is still deeply ingrained in the subconscious. And to think, okay, what made me particularly happy? What did I get angry about? Maybe ask myself, did I like my coffee in the morning? Or something like that. And to really do it step by step. And that alone often helps to be able to remember my dreams. I've heard that tip before, yes. There are a lot of possibilities, and you have to see if it works for you. As I said, I'm most fascinated by the topic when there are such strong parallels within the dream event. And then I ask myself, where does it come from? Or who supports us? Why do we all have dream helpers who are on our side? If that were purely created by the brain, I wouldn't expect that there would be something like a state of vibration that we all feel the same before we come to a new level. And the most common theory about dreams, which then says, yes, we just process the stimuli of the day, in most cases, I can't confirm that, because most dreams take place outside of my usual reality, completely outside of my usual reality, and in completely different worlds, with people I've never seen before. Sometimes I'm someone else. I'm not always me in my dreams, so that's what seems the least fitting to me. And the interesting thing is, scientists still don't know why we dream. They don't know. There are a lot of theories, but it's not really proven why. And I also find it interesting, instead of just turning to your own dreams and looking for the answers there, everything else is examined first. That's right. I think that anyone who is interested in consciousness research should at least try to somehow relate dreams to it. I think that if we have reached a critical mass of people who actually deal intensively with their dreams, it won't take long before a large number of them say, "I had a precognitive dream. I dreamed of the future." I know someone, half-siblings of mine, who dreamed of events that occurred in my past before they were born. And I had motivated them to remember their dreams, and they read me a few dreams, and I said, "So you dreamed what I experienced?" Exactly. As if there was a kind of collective subconsciousness where space and time are stored, and individual people can then perhaps also access it. There's also shared dream phenomenon, where you have the same dream as someone else. A friend and I had the same dream. Not in the same night, I have to say, but it was the same with a few differences. And we then experienced the same thing together a few months later. We both dreamed that a roebuck was shot right next to us and was lying on the ground injured, and we wanted to get help. And it was a terrible, upsetting situation. I wrote down all my dreams and said to my friend, "Please, if you dream of me, then tell me about it." And shortly after, she actually told me about my dream, that a roebuck was shot. And a few months later, we went jogging, and next to us, a roebuck was actually shot by a hunter, relatively close by to us. So we were also upset, because it seemed dangerous that he would shoot him directly. And we both dreamed of that, and then it even came true. These kinds of consciousness phenomena I can no longer explain with current models. And the more people have these experiences, the more we have to question it, I think. Yes, definitely. And I also had the experience that when I, for example, accompany someone who wants to see someone again or something like that, we meet weekly for one night, and that works very well. May I then ask, so you practically offer to help someone to achieve an astral journey, and when you go to sleep, you resolve to meet the other person? Well, basically, it's like this. I accompany this person for 5 weeks because I think that's what it takes to increase the ability to remember, simply because the person I accompany often can't remember in the beginning, or they're not used to remembering. I pick the person up at night, that is, as soon as I'm out of my body, I navigate to this person and pull them out of their body. By concentrating on this person. Yes, I visualize the person. I have a photo of them in advance. In most cases, this person has already made it out of their body by the time I get to them. And then, we basically visit the target person, or whoever wants to meet this person. And there have been a lot of similarities. A mother who was allowed to see her daughter again, who had died at the age of 1, and I had also experienced something similar, and we exchanged what we experienced, what I experienced, and of course she was incredibly happy and knew she had just experienced that with complete awareness, and that it was not a dream. I could take my daughter in my arms. She was already waiting for me at home, sitting next to the bed. Beautiful, yes. Really, it can be very, very comforting, I think, to experience something like that. And many people I have had the experience already dream lucidly anyway. I have a friend, for example, for whom this is the most normal thing in the world. He doesn't even know a normal dream. I've already heard that there are actually people who almost every night automatically stand with full awareness in their dream reality. Enviable, especially because then you also have the opportunity to explore the dream reality. I practiced it according to this example from Jürgen Siewe, and when I became lucid, I checked the surfaces. I like to do that. Look, how does it feel? I saw the wallpaper in the room, and it actually had traces of aging, small cracks. It was very exact. And then you think, if the brain creates that, that's very impressive. If suddenly it invents things, small traces on the paint, and everything is depicted in a very exact way. This is also quite an exciting field. I currently use lucid dreams mostly to transform them into out-of-body experiences. But you can really do the greatest things. You can create doorways, fly, create people out of your subconsciousness. For example, new tastes. I once said I would like to taste something that does not really exist, that I've never tasted before. All of these things. But you have to be sure and aware that you can do it. If you only doubt it a little bit, it doesn't go well. You have to train that and just try out what can you really do there. There are no limits to your fantasy, and that can be quite attractive. Yes, I can already see, based on our experiences that we have had, it can be confirmed that there are many other realities in which you can have experiences, realities that we may not deal with enough in everyday life. I think we can also see from these experiences that the common worldview does not have to be the final one. And what I particularly like about your story and your way of life is that you were able to use this terrible experience with your daughter to open up this new reality for yourself and passed on your knowledge to other people and provided them with a tool for dealing with grief. I'm happy that you told us about it and shared your experience with us in such a rich way. Thank you very much. Thank you.